I don't see you as a husband anymore, David. Just a roommate. Those words, they hit me like a physical blow, but they didn't knock me down. Instead, they solidified something deep inside. Because in that exact moment, I decided if Olivia wanted a roommate, she was going to get one. Just not the kind she envisioned. And by the time she realized I was absolutely, irrevocably serious, the divorce papers were already drawn up, the wheels were already in motion. My name's David. I'm 33, and I was married for 5 years. We lived in this beautiful house in Alexandria, Virginia, the kind with the big garage, a finished basement, the whole suburban package that screams, "You've made it." But honestly, it felt more like clocking into a job where you're just counting the hours until your shift ends. Olivia worked as a project manager, pulling in maybe $78,000 a year. I was in logistics management, closer to 125, putting in 50-hour weeks, handling supply chains and vendor negotiations. It's the kind of work that doesn't just switch off when you leave the office. And when I was home, I handled everything else. I was out in the yard every weekend, maintained both cars, managed our investments, cooked most dinners. The house maintenance too, furnace filters, cleaning gutters, bleeding radiators. All that invisible work that keeps a home running smoothly, the stuff nobody notices until it suddenly stops. Olivia's contribution, lately, seemed to be mostly complaints and new terminology she picked up from somewhere. It had started about 8 months back, when her cousin Sarah began hosting these weekly get-togethers. Now, Sarah, she was one of those people who discovered social justice at 28 and decided it was everyone else's problem. The type who'd never held a job longer than 6 months but had incredibly strong opinions about how everyone else should live their lives. Olivia would come home from Sarah's place armed with this new vocabulary: mental load, emotional labor, patriarchal expectations. And suddenly, everything I did was either insufficient, or problematic, or somehow oppressive. Our intimate life? It dwindled from twice a week to twice a month, then to essentially nothing. And her rejections weren't gentle. They came with this irritated sigh, like I was bothering her by even bringing it up. Then, one day, I noticed her wedding ring was gone. She claimed it needed cleaning. Except 2 months later, it was still sitting in a jewelry box in her dresser, not at any jeweler, just abandoned there, like it meant nothing. The small disrespects started piling up. She'd scroll through her phone while I was talking, ask me to repeat myself without looking up. She'd roll her eyes when I'd mention anything about my day. But then I'd catch her smiling at her screen when she was texting someone. That specific smile she used to give me. About 3 months ago, I decided to throw a barbecue. I woke up at 5 in the morning to prep the brisket, got the smoker going, made everything from scratch. I was exhausted but proud. Later, I happened to overhear Sarah and Olivia in the kitchen, laughing about how marriage was a trap and how men just get comfortable and stop trying once they've locked you down. I was standing just outside the window, holding a platter of meat I'd been working on for 6 hours. And in that moment, everything just crystallized. This wasn't going to get better. It was accelerating downhill. A few weeks after that barbecue, the actual breaking point arrived. It was an unremarkable evening. I casually mentioned maybe looking at a new vehicle, something like a 4Runner, practical for camping trips and potentially a family down the road. That's when she launched into this whole prepared speech. It sounded like she'd been rehearsing it. She told me she'd been doing significant thinking and personal growth work, that she needed to be honest about her feelings. And then she dropped it. That line, "I don't see you as a husband anymore, David, just a roommate." She said we were functioning more like roommates, and we should just acknowledge that reality and stop pretending otherwise. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just went completely cold inside. I asked her what, exactly, she meant by that. She said the passion had evaporated, that she felt like we were just going through the motions. When I pointed out that she was the one who'd eliminated all physical connection between us, she accused me of being dismissive and not hearing her needs. Then she proposed this arrangement where we'd continue living together, splitting household responsibilities, but without the expectations of a traditional marriage. Just coexisting. She actually told me I should be grateful she was being honest instead of going behind my back. That phrasing stuck with me. Going behind my back. The way she said it, like infidelity was an option she'd actively weighed and decided against as some kind of favor to me. I asked her directly if she wanted to see other people. She got visibly uncomfortable. Hesitated way too long before saying she wasn't planning anything specific, but if something developed naturally, she didn't want to feel guilty about exploring it. Right there, on our couch, in the house I'd been breaking my back to maintain. Everything clicked into focus. She wanted me to keep funding the lifestyle while she tested the market, keeping me as her safety net while she explored if she could upgrade. And I was supposed to smile and accept this because, at least, she was being transparent. I told her I needed time to process what she'd said. I kept my expression completely neutral, didn't give her any emotional reaction to work with. She seemed almost relieved, like she'd braced for a fight and was glad to avoid it. That night, I moved into the guest room for the first time in our marriage. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying 5 years of memories and seeing all of them through this new, chilling lens. Every complaint, every eye roll, every time she chose her phone over actually talking to me. The next morning, I contacted a divorce attorney. Not to file immediately, just to understand my options. He explained that Virginia was a no-fault state, that I needed to document everything carefully, separate my finances, and prepare for at least a 2 to 3 month process if things went smoothly, considerably longer if they didn't. He emphasized not moving out of the house, not doing anything that could be characterized as abandonment. Maintain civility, but distance, while I got everything arranged. I thanked him, scheduled a follow-up, and went to work like it was any other day. But everything had fundamentally changed. I'd made my decision. She wanted a roommate. She was going to get exactly that, just not the version where I subsidized her life while she figured out if she could do better. The attorney and I spent 2 full weeks in consultation mode. I learned every rule of this game, figuring out precisely how to protect myself legally and financially before making any irreversible moves. He walked me through the complete process, again emphasizing documenting her behavior, tracking every expense, separating finances cleanly, and critically, avoiding anything that could be twisted into abandonment or financial misconduct in court. My first move was to open a new bank account in only my name. I rerouted my direct deposit there and left the joint account active, but exclusively for shared bills. I built a detailed spreadsheet showing every shared expense, mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries. Everything. I calculated it all down to the last dollar and discovered I'd been covering roughly 70% of our costs for the past 3 years while she kept most of her salary for personal spending. I sent her a professionally worded email with the complete breakdown attached. I informed her that starting the following month, we'd be splitting everything 50-50ths. Because we were roommates now, and roommates divide rent and bills equally. That's simply how these arrangements work. Her response arrived in under 5 minutes. All caps. Accusing me of financial abuse and attempting to control her. I replied with a single sentence, explaining I was respecting her stated wishes for a roommate arrangement, and roommates don't subsidize each other's lifestyles. Next, I canceled the anniversary dinner reservation I'd made months earlier at her favorite steakhouse, the place that cost $300 minimum, where I'd requested a specific table. But roommates don't celebrate anniversaries, so that had to go. I removed her from my auto insurance as a listed driver since she maintained her own policy anyway. I changed every password to streaming services, our Costco account, Spotify family plan, everything I was paying for that she'd been accessing. When she discovered she couldn't log into Netflix anymore, she came storming into my home office demanding explanations. I looked up from my laptop and told her very calmly that roommates maintained separate subscriptions. If she wanted access, she could contribute half or get her own account. Entirely her choice. She just stood there, her mouth working open and closed like a fish out of water, completely thrown. Because I wasn't yelling or being vindictive. I was simply stating facts in the same neutral tone you'd use to discuss trash day. My entire routine transformed. I started spending 90 minutes at the gym after work instead of rushing home. I'd grab Chipotle or do Sunday meal prep so I wasn't cooking dinners for two anymore. I stopped asking about her day or attempting conversation beyond basic household logistics. I moved all my belongings into the guest room on a permanent basis. Bought new sheets, set up my laptop and workspace in there. Essentially created my own separate living area where I could close the door and not deal with her presence. The first major confrontation came roughly a week into this new system. She cornered me in the kitchen, insisting this wasn't what she'd meant, that reducing pressure didn't equal becoming strangers under the same roof. I sat down my coffee and asked her what exactly she thought the word roommates meant. Because from my perspective, roommates don't share beds, don't go on dates, don't celebrate relationship milestones. They simply share space and split expenses. Which was precisely what I was doing. She tried arguing that we were still legally married and I was being vindictive. But I reminded her she was the one who explicitly stated she didn't see me as a husband. I was merely honoring her expressed perspective. And if she'd somehow changed her mind about that, she should probably communicate it clearly. She didn't. She just made a frustrated sound and walked away. And I knew I had her trapped logically, even though she hated it emotionally. Our anniversary landed on a weekend about 3 weeks into the new arrangement. And instead of being anywhere near her, I packed camping gear and drove up to Shenandoah National Park. Found a dispersed campsite, spent 3 days hiking, sleeping under the stars with my phone mostly powered off. She sent 15 texts, ranging from asking my location to calling me childish and immature. I only responded once, saying I was camping and would return Monday. When I got back Sunday night, she was waiting with her own spreadsheet, attempting to prove the finances weren't as imbalanced as I'd demonstrated. But her math was creative at best. She conveniently omitted the vacation I'd funded, the new tires on her car, roughly 6 months of grocery expenses, and half the home repairs. I pulled up my records, showed her receipt after receipt, bank statement after bank statement, and watched her expression collapse as she realized she couldn't argue with documented evidence. She pivoted to emotional appeals, claimed I was punishing her for being honest about her feelings, that this wasn't the man she'd married. And I agreed completely. I told her the man she married believed he had a partner. It turned out he had a dependent who resented him for providing. That landed hard. She went silent, locked herself in what used to be our bedroom, and didn't speak to me for 2 straight days. Then Sarah started sending me texts. Long paragraphs about how I was being controlling and engaging in abuse tactics, throwing around therapy terminology she clearly didn't understand. I finally responded, telling her she was 32 years old, unemployed, living with her parents, and perhaps not the most qualified person to be dispensing marriage advice. She blocked me within seconds. A buddy from my gym pulled me aside one morning and mentioned his sister had spotted Olivia on Hinge. He showed me a screenshot he'd obtained. There she was, using photos I recognized from last summer. Her profile stated she was looking for something genuine and real. I captured screenshots, forwarded them to my attorney, and didn't confront her about it directly. Just filed it away as evidence, and continued waiting. She started arriving home late on specific nights, dressed significantly nicer than she did for work, makeup fully done, smiling at her phone in that same way I'd noticed months before. I'd just acknowledge her presence with a nod and return to whatever I was doing, like I was completely indifferent. Because at that point, I genuinely was. One evening, she announced she was heading to Sarah's place for their regular gathering. She left around 7. Something prompted me to drive past Sarah's parents' house an hour later. Olivia's car wasn't in the driveway. I checked the surrounding area and located her vehicle parked outside a bistro downtown, one of those trendy spots with Edison bulb lighting and small plates. Through the front window, I could see her, sitting across from some guy, laughing, leaning forward with her hand positioned near his on the table. I took 3 clear photos from across the street, wide angle enough to show both their faces unmistakably, automatically time-stamped by my phone. Then I drove home and sent them to my attorney with a message stating I was ready to file and wanted her served at her workplace. He called me back within 20 minutes, asked if I was absolutely certain about this. I told him I'd never been more sure of anything in my existence. "Prepare the papers," I said. "I want this executed quickly and cleanly." She'd made her choice. She wanted freedom and options while keeping me as a financial safety net. But I wasn't anyone's backup plan. Not anymore. Not ever again. The papers were finalized by Wednesday, and my attorney arranged for the process server to deliver them Thursday at 2 in the afternoon, directly to her office. Maximum impact, impossible to hide from her. Coworkers. I stayed home that day, used a personal day from work, and spent the morning packing additional belongings into the guest room, organizing important documents, making absolutely certain everything I needed was secured and separated from her possessions. The notification came at 2:15. A text from an unfamiliar number, all capital letters, just stated I needed to call her immediately. Then another text. Then my phone started ringing continuously, and I let every call go straight to voicemail. She burst through the front door at 3:30, her face blotchy and red, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She was oscillating between sobbing and screaming. The first words out of her mouth were about how I'd publicly humiliated her in front of everyone at her workplace. I was sitting calmly at the kitchen table with my laptop and coffee. I just looked at her and said she'd humiliated herself when she created a dating profile and started going on actual dates while she was still legally my wife, living in our house. Her face went white, then flushed red again, and she stammered, asking what I was talking about, playing confused, like I hadn't personally witnessed the evidence. So, I pulled up the screenshots on my phone, the Hinge profile, the photos of her at the bistro with that guy. Everything time-stamped and permanently saved. She switched tactics immediately. Claimed she was just exploring options because I'd pushed her away emotionally, that I'd made her feel unwanted and unloved, that this was fundamentally my fault for treating her like a roommate when she'd only wanted some space to process her feelings. I asked her directly when exactly she'd been planning to inform me about the dates, about this guy, about any of it. She couldn't formulate an answer, just kept insisting it wasn't what it appeared to be, that they were just talking and nothing serious had developed. I told her it didn't matter at this point, that whether she'd been physically involved with him or just contemplating it, she'd already emotionally exited the marriage months ago, and I was finished pretending otherwise. She attempted one final manipulation. Promised she'd delete everything, cut off contact with anyone she'd been talking to, suggested we could try counseling and work on rebuilding us. She even said she loved me. First time those words had come out of her mouth in probably 6 months. I stood up, looked directly into her eyes, and told her she didn't love me. She loved the lifestyle I provided, the house, the financial security, the convenience of having someone manage everything while she figured out if she could trade up to something better. Her mouth fell open, and she just stared. And I informed her she needed to leave immediately because I was done with this conversation, and done with her entirely. She refused, insisted it was her house, too. I reminded her that my attorney had already filed official papers, that temporary orders would be arriving soon, and that she should probably secure somewhere else to stay because this was about to become very official, very quickly. She left crying, actually peeled out of the driveway. I immediately contacted a locksmith, had every lock changed within 2 hours, code compliant, with one complete set of keys deposited with my attorney in case she attempted to claim I was illegally locking her out. I packed her essential belongings, clothes, toiletries, laptop, personal items, loaded everything into boxes, and placed them on the front porch with a text message stating she had until 8 p.m. to collect them or I'd be donating everything to Goodwill the following morning. She arrived at 7 o'clock with Sarah in tow. Both of them projected hatred through their stares as they loaded boxes into Sarah's vehicle. Sarah actually shouted something about me being an abuser, but I just stood in the doorway with my phone recording video. Didn't say a single word. Let them take what they needed, and leave the property. Her mom called me that same night, crying, asking what had happened and why her daughter was claiming I'd kicked her out with nowhere to go. I kept it brief. Told her this was between Olivia and myself, that her daughter had decided she wanted a fundamentally different life, and I was simply giving her exactly that freedom. Her mom attempted guilt tactics, said marriage was about forgiveness and working through difficult periods together. But I just stated that some things genuinely can't be worked through, and ended the call. The social media campaign launched within days. Vague posts about surviving narcissistic abuse and toxic masculinity, inspirational quotes about enduring difficult seasons. Her friends flooded the comments with heart emojis and supportive messages. The entire performative display. I didn't respond, didn't post anything myself. Just captured screenshots of everything and forwarded it all to my attorney, who added it to the growing file. A mutual friend reached out privately and informed me Olivia was spiraling badly, that she'd been having explosive arguments with Sarah, that she was couch surfing, and the situation wasn't sustainable. Part of me felt sympathy for approximately 5 seconds. Then I remembered her sitting across from another man, laughing and flirting, while I was at home, believing we were working on things. Any sympathy instantly evaporated. 2 weeks after she was served, I heard through multiple sources that she'd been terminated from her job. Apparently, she'd accumulated multiple tardiness warnings, had existing performance issues, and the divorce drama became the final justification they needed. Her parents refused to let her move back into their home. I never got the complete story, but apparently, there was significant history there. Boundaries they weren't willing to compromise, even for their daughter's crisis. Sarah's family eventually kicked her out after Olivia blamed Sarah for destroying the marriage with all her ideology and advice, which was remarkably ironic, considering Olivia had been an enthusiastic participant in all those conversations. She sent a message from Sarah's phone late one night. Said she had nowhere left to go, that she'd sign whatever documents I wanted if I just let her stay temporarily in the guest room until she got back on her feet financially. I replied with a single word, no. Then added that she'd wanted independence and freedom, and now she had both. That I wasn't her safety net, or her backup plan, or her landlord. I was done. The divorce finalized after 11 weeks total. She signed everything without contest once she fully realized she had zero leverage and no energy remaining to fight. The house sold faster than expected. Market conditions were favorable. We split the proceeds according to what each of us had actually contributed, and I walked away with enough for a substantial down payment on a condo in downtown. I started hiking every single weekend, dropped 20 pounds, picked up photography as a serious hobby, and genuinely began enjoying my own company for the first time in years. Last I heard, she was already living with some guy she'd met through online dating, posting couple photos like the divorce had never even happened. And I felt absolutely nothing seeing those images. Here's what I learned from all of this: when someone explicitly tells you who they are, believe them the very first time. She told me I wasn't her husband anymore, and I accepted that statement at face value. She just never expected that acceptance would come with actual consequences. She wanted roommates, and roommates don't fund your entire life while you audition potential replacements. They split bills fairly and go their completely separate ways, which is exactly what happened. Sometimes the trash really does take itself out. Do you think I did the right thing by sticking to her roommate declaration, or was I too harsh?